And Paul, where is Paul? Thank you, Paul, for almost bailing us out. And thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm not even going to talk. I'm just going to pass it over to Fadden. He is amazing. You know what? I think there's a bunch of us here, all that we all met at Jose, who will be speaking later on today. And we're all in the CLA, which is Connected Leaders Academy. And with that, I'm going to stay quiet and I'm going to let you listen to the amazing Paul McFadden. Paul, tell us all about.
Oh, Dr. Reverend Mary Ann Patton. Thank you very much for giving me space to share information and some thoughts and some insights. Hello, everyone. Paul McFadden. I'm the CEO and founder of Evolve Human Potential. And one of the things I get to do is I get to take people on a very personal journey of discovery and collective introspection. No, I'm not a relationship expert and relationship coach, so I'm not going to be talking about that specifically, but I do want to share some insights and some thoughts on the experience of love and how we find ourselves in that experience. We've heard a lot of talk around communication, expectations, commitments, and I think all those things are certainly spot on recommendations and strategies and things to be thinking about. But I just want to talk about the experience and how we find ourselves in that process. And I want to share a few stories with you and really make some connections. And I want to talk about this first story is about my father's mother. And if anybody knows who I am, I use very specific language on purpose. It's all intentional because language matters. And so my father's mother um, was someone who I'll just say at some point in my life, very early on, was not present. It wasn't part of our family in many respects. And I learned at an early age that this person was not in my life. And so as I grew up and got older, I used to refer to her to my parents as my father's mother. And she kept tabs on us as children. I had two younger siblings, and she kept tabs on us. And my father would share information every once in a while with her about what were going on with the kids and the grandkids. And we eventually grew up, became adults, and I had no contact with her until about age 35. And she reached out to myself and to my younger siblings, and she wanted to reconnect. And I think part of it was she was looking to explain her side of the story potentially, or certainly um, seeking connection and forgiveness and just to reconnect with the children. Now, my younger sisters engaged in the conversation and made and helped make peace with that. However, I was in a space at the time where I chose not to. And in choosing not to, I was very bitter, angry about the entire experience in growing up in my childhood and then becoming an adult and not having this person around me. And I refused to make the connection. Long story short, a few years passed and she ended up passing away. Now, that's not the end of the story. That's really just the beginning. And she passed away, and my father and I and my the older of my two younger sisters went to her funeral, and we attended the funeral. And she happened to be in the military, and she was actually a high-ranking um, African American field nurse during World War II, and she had a 21 gun salute. Now, myself being in the military and myself, I was former Navy Reserve. I understood the gravity and the honor of what that meant. There were things that I didn't know about her at the time. And she had a 21 gun salute. There was just my father, my sister, and myself at the funeral. And for those who know what a military funeral service looks like, there is all the chairs in the entire area are blue, and there's one seat that's the red seat. And I ultimately, for some reason, I don't know how it worked out, found myself sitting in the red seat. And we go through the service. And the service is done. There's a 21 gun salute, and then the honor guard comes out and they fold the flag. And in the folding of the flag, what happens after that, after the honor guard folds it into this nice, neat, perfect triangle, they place it in a case and they give it to the person sitting in the red seat. In the moment I was sitting in the red seat and they handed me the flag, I felt all the power and all the weight of regret sitting on my shoulders because I refused to allow this person back into my life and give them maybe the forgiveness that they were seeking. And all that transferred to me immediately. And for many years, I lived with a significant amount of regret because my belief system at the time was there's no way I can have that conversation. There's no way I could hear her out. There's no way I could potentially forgive her for what may have transpired because I didn't know I was a child when it all happened. And as an adult, I wasn't trying to give space for it. And I had an opportunity, fast forward to 2023, I had an opportunity to speak to someone who happened to be a spiritual medium. And this person had no idea of my history, my family's history, nor let alone that story I just shared, which I haven't shared with very many people. This is actually probably the first time I shared it publicly. um, so I met with a spiritual medium, and this medium says, you have a family, an ancestor who's trying to communicate with you. And, and she said, it's a woman. And she told me to specifically tell you that it's your father's mother. And then in that moment, I froze because no one else knew how I referred to my grandmother as my father's mother. And she began to tell me intricate details about my experience growing up and how she was not part of my life. So that shook me for a moment. And in an instant, I realized that she was still with me, that she was watching, and she had some advice, some wisdom to pass on to me. And I share that story for a couple reasons because I think many times when we try to we express ourselves, we say we're certain types of individuals, we have certain types of values, we have certain characteristics that we like to follow, that we like to emulate. The biggest thing that we can ever do, the biggest strength we ever have, or the biggest thing we can control is our ability to forgive. And forgiveness breeds a lot of power, a lot of strength. And in my reconnection and allowing myself to forgive, I found even deeper love in myself. And so when I think about this experience, this love experience, and how we find self, and everybody's talked about the act of loving yourself. And I think that's really important, but sometimes we miss the how to do that. And so I want to share one way to do that is to learn the power of forgiveness, right? Connecting to self. Now, forgiveness can go a long way because in that forgiveness, I found love for myself, but there were some things that I probably hadn't forgiven myself. And I want to fast forward, actually take a step back and talk about another situation that some of us find ourselves in. On in 2026, I was at a conference, and I had been invited to this conference. It's a pretty prestigious conference where I was able to work as a coach and facilitator with leaders and teams, executive teams with Fortune 100 companies. It was called the Global Institute for Leadership Development. Very prestigious event that was held in Palm Desert, California, every year. And during that time, I was the CEO of another company, and I had been invited to this event to be a speaker and a facilitator and a coach. And I felt like I had reached the pinnacle of where I was in my career at that time as an entrepreneur. And in the process, I got to meet a person who happened to be on the board of directors, happened to be one of the foremost researchers on the area of in the area of purpose at the time. I didn't know who he was. And as much as I thought I had reached this place of success, and we all have our own definitions of success, based on what we've experienced in our lives and the things we've overcome and the things we've been more resilient with. But I've reached this place where I thought was where I needed to be, but yet there was something that was missing. And so I happened to meet this man. His name was Richard Leiter. And he asked me two questions at this event, which over lunch, which stuck with me, and then kind of was the catalyst for an entire journey. And he asked me, he said, Paul, what are the two most important days in a human being's life? And the second question was, do you like mathematics? And I've shared this I've shared this story before with some people, but I'm going to share it here with this group here. And so I said, well, the first two sound a little bit more difficult. So let me talk about the mathematics first. I like mathematics. And so he shared with me a number, and the number happened to be 29,200. And he said, do you know what this number represents? And at the time I didn't know. And he said, this number represents the number of days in the average life span of a human being, 29,200. He said, so if you want to figure out how much time you have left, multiply your age by 365, take that number, subtract it from 29,000, you're going to get an answer. And so I got that answer. And then it kind of hit me and it kind of sunk in a little bit, what that looked like. And I started thinking about my life and the experiences. And I would certainly tell everyone, everything you've experienced in the past, no matter whether you want to categorize it as good or bad, all those experiences lead to right now. And if it wasn't for those experiences, you wouldn't be here right now. You wouldn't be living the life you're living. You wouldn't be here tuned in. You wouldn't be listening to this. Regardless of what those experiences were, if you change one variable, you're not here. You're somewhere else. So be grateful and thankful for where you are right now because you're here in this space. But I started reflecting on life and thinking, like, I am not where I want to be. Let's talk about these questions you just asked me, because now I feel like they're more important than I initially interpreted them to be. And the first answer was I gave. I said, well, the day you're born. If I wasn't born, then I guess there would be no discovery. So the first answer to your question is the first most important day is the day you're born. But then the second day surprised me because it could have been the day that you got married. It could have been the day you fell in love. It could have been the day that you had children. It could have been the day you landed your dream job. It could have been the day that you got your dream relationship. It could have been the day for many things. But what surprised me is that it was the day that you figure out why you're here. And many of us don't ask those questions to ourselves until typically near end of life. And when you think about the 29,200 days that we're given in the experience, and if we're asking that question at the end of life, we don't have a lot of time to live those dreams, at least let alone figure out what they are. And we have many things to kill the dreams. The dream killers could have been you had a traumatic experience growing up. The dream killer could have been you didn't have caregivers who encouraged you to do the things and follow your dreams, follow your vision, follow all those passions that you had. The dream killers could have been, counselors, school teachers. It could have been a lot of people. It could have been an event. It could have been a loss of a parent. It could have been loss of a loved one, or God forbid, abuse, trauma. But what I've come to realize is that while all those things did happen, and we are not responsible for things that happened to us when we were children. But as we get older, we become aware of those things that happen. We are supposed to have these experiences as human beings. We are here to have the full range of emotional experiences, from everything from love into hate and everything in between. But the thing is that once we become aware of them, we don't have to become them. See, become them is suffering, and suffering in any human being's life is optional, right? And that typically becomes a hard pill to swallow when you think about it from that perspective. You're supposed to feel the experience. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. However, if we become attached to and become the experience, then we're choosing to suffer. Now, there are many of us who aren't living the lives that we want, or don't have the relationships that we want, or don't have the dream job that we want. Um, However, we had a fire within us, and there is a reconnection to that fire, that passion, the things that we're passionate about, the things that truly tap into our gifts, um, the things that we value as being important. Those are the things that actually truly matter in this human experience, and we have the opportunity to choose what those things and how we live. We are the master of our fate. We are the captain of our soul. That's from a poem called Invictus. Um, and that has been a driving force behind many of the things that I do. But once I became aware of this, it's the day you figure out why, you get on a quest. And if you want to experience the life, the lifestyle that you've always dreamed or wanted to create for yourself, or have the relationship that you want to create for yourself, or have the dream experience or job that you want to create for yourself, you really have to create a little bit of stillness and really answer these questions around: what are my gifts, what are my values, what am I truly passionate about? It's the passion that we align to. It's the passions that we connect to. And if we're able to connect to our passions and understand that our purpose is really about growing and giving, growing yourself and giving to others, when you start to live in your passion and in your purpose, the things that you do become less like work and they become more like love. And many people will tell you that when you are working in your passion truly, and you're truly giving of your gifts to other people, you are demonstrating love in physical form, right? So the second thing I want folks to think about is, so the first was about forgiveness. The second is about the power of displaying love, working in your passion, really truly giving up your gifts to other people. And the last one is actually related to a conversation I recently had at my podcast called Becoming Human 2.0 Unscripted. And I have these raw, unfiltered, open conversations with folks globally around the world. And we're talking about all things from consciousness, quantum physics, quantum theory, stoicism, ancient wisdom, um, modern science, and everything in between, personal development journey, all those things, spirituality. And I talked to a heart-centered success coach. Her name is Diane Hayworth. And she's in Virginia. And we had a conversation around um, love, having loving interactions. And she actually wrote a book called The Be Love Principles. And it's a very interesting read. And folks who haven't heard of that and certainly interested, certainly go check that out. But we were talking about how we create the space to have more loving interactions. You've heard folks talk about the three biggest things that will kill a relationship: lack of communication, lack of money, and lack of sex. Right? And we've heard about the bad boys and folks in masculine and feminine energy, and all that's all 100% true. Um, there are expectations that we have that are unmet and typically unspoken, but there's also commitments that we make when we enter into relationships that we sometimes don't realize that we have committed to. Love is a feeling, it's a frequency, but love is also an action that you have to choose to participate in every single day. It becomes like a practice. And I want to reiterate the word practice, because practice is important. Um, because in order to create the space to be more loving, number one, you have to be able to love yourself. Many people have already said and stated that you have to love yourself. But how do you create the space? How do you create distance from your experiences and your situations to be able to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I did overreact in this situation. Maybe I did, instead of responding, I just used my programming that was already there innately in me, since I was 7 years old to greet this particular situation or this person that I'm with. Maybe I have been connecting to all my past experiences and past traumas and still reliving those because I haven't healed those things. Creating space becomes a practice, a loving practice, whether that's through meditation for some people, some contemplative practice. That could be through prayer for other people. That could be through having a gratitude or a compassion practice. But the idea here is that we need to create the space to tap into the intuition, to tap into the healing power that's within all of us, that we can find through the love experience. Because if we can tap into that loving, healing power, we can find forgiveness for ourselves. We can find the power to love ourselves even more deeply. And then that gives us the ability to treat more people in a loving and compassionate manner. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're going to give love, you're expecting to receive love. And I think Sifu Raphael said something about that earlier, that we give love to everybody. Um, it doesn't mean it's romantic love. That's a difference between romantic love and love, right? So I think many times we have to tease out how people interpret the word love. So I think even his talk, he talked about in the beginning, what is love? How do we define love? Because when we can align on the definitions of love, then we're having the same conversation. But many of us sometimes aren't even having the same conversation when we mention the word love. We have love. I have love for every human being. Typically, you will see me greeting people as my beautiful human being. It took me a long time to get to that point, many, many decades, to come with my own experiences to get to the point where I'm now my beautiful human beings, right? My beautiful humans. And I do that, and I do it on purpose because we all are having this experience. We're all in the experience. We're not doing this experience by ourselves. We're doing this experience together. Sometimes we don't realize that, but we're all in this human experience at some point, at some position in that process. But as beautiful humans, right, we have to, and I hate using the word have to, so I'm expressing this emotionally, but I don't particularly enjoy using the word have to or need to or should, because those things sound like we're making excuses. I think it would better serve us if we were able to treat one another with more compassion in a more loving fashion, and just to acknowledge, hey, you're in an experience. You might be doing the best you can, but I'm also here to help you in the journey. And sometimes I'm going to tell you the things that you might not want to hear, but it's just going to help you become better. Right? And we have to do that coming from a loving, authentic, genuine place. So, three thoughts, right? So I was talking about finding self in the love experience, having more forgiveness, being able to tap into the power of forgiveness, being able to really understand and align to what you're truly passionate about, and find the passion in the life, whatever you're doing. Many people will tell you that I work and I don't really have a passion for my job, and my job is not my purpose, but it serves the purpose of making money. That's amazing. Your purpose might not be in your job. It's beautiful if it is, because that is the full expression of love. But if it's not, find it, right? Find it so that you're not walking around like a zombie thinking about how much you hate the thing you're doing when you could be doing the thing you love on the side. And maybe one day that becomes the full expression of you, because when our seasons change, sometimes the things that we do change. And the last thing is about creating space, creating stillness through meditation, through gratitude, through compassion, through prayer, but having a spiritual practice where we get quiet, we get still, to be able to really tune into ourselves so that we can show up as our best selves, not only for us, but for the people that we're involved with and that we interact with. And so, with that, Marianne, I hope that that is something that lands with this audience. And I'm going to turn it back over to you because I know you probably have thoughts on what I just said, and I'm happy open to any questions and thoughts about
I
that
just
too.
want to thank you so much for sharing. And when my speakers come on here and they're so extra vulnerable with you guys and us guys here behind the cameras, I'm just like, gosh, I love it. I love Talk about I'm in love with my job, with what I do for a living. I am that person for sure. And I think somebody was asking me, which one's your favorite? And I go, that's tough because really they're all my favorite, or at this age, I just won't do it. That took me a while to learn because I've done plenty of things I didn't want to do for a long time. Maybe I liked them at the beginning, and then I don't like them so much anyway. And it took me a long time to let go, but now I just like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Too short. And
Yes,
it's
indeed.
fun, but yeah, no. So thank you so much for sharing. And literally everyone has talked about how important it is to love yourself first. So I hope you all get the message that it is important for all of us to love ourselves first. That's my topic of conversation. That's my topic of speaking almost 95, 6, 7, 8, 9% of the time for everyone. I mean, there's a few talks I've done with authenticity and leadership, which is one of my favorite.
Hmm.
Well, but the importance of self-love as a foundation for literally anything. If you
Absolutely.
want success in your love life, if you want success in your work, if you want success in life, with your health, with your love, with your money, with everything, self-love. Mirror, everybody get a mirror because some of you don't own
Put
a
the
mirror.
mirror up, y'all. Put the mirror up. It's right there.
Whatever you think you're going to say to him, her, or them, it's gonna it's gonna be back at you. It's coming back. That reflection is first. If you're gonna say this, that, or the other, mirror first and go, mm-hmm. And if you're going to say that and you're comfortable saying that about yourself and you're happy to say it, then go ahead and say it about someone else.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let's
I
see.
would love I would love to just add, Paul, thank you so much for your transparency and vulnerability and how you opened this. When you shared what you shared, it was so powerful. And when you are honest with the people around you, that is a true expression of love. And you've shared a lot of love on here today by giving other people the encouragement to recognize where they didn't choose to forgive. That hit me so hard because being vulnerable about that is not easy. And that vulnerability shows your love to the world. I adore you. You know that. And I think you've stolen a lot of people's hearts just by sharing your story today and empowering them to love themselves enough to forgive. So thank
Yes.
you.
And thank you so much for saying that the first time, because you said you didn't discuss this ever before. So thank you for sharing it here. I feel so blessed. Like people have launched their products on here, launched their programs. Like I love this. So thank you so much. I'm not sure. I think there's Dr. Oliver Reed. I'm like, I know he was.
Dr. Oliver Reed.
I think we lost him a bit. It's okay. We're gonna let him have a minute, and as soon as he appears on camera, I'll introduce him.
All
So
right.
thank you again so much, Paul, and
Thank you.
flexible earlier.